we're eating here. S-195 is the mental health peer support specialist.
And we are now live.
So this is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our work on bills that are carrying appropriations. And yesterday we took testimony on S-195, which has to do with mental health peer support specialists. There was very large appropriations, including setting up more centers as well as certification. We do have some money in the budget adjustment that was requested by the administration to start this certification. And so what we've got here is really what Senator Westman made the motion to do, and that is to take the appropriations out of the bill. It would move forward the certification process, and it would articulate a statement about the value of the residential programs, but recognizing at this point that would be a funding decision that is not going to be made here in this bill, but would be in the future. So Katie has taken the conversation we had yesterday, and now we have an amendment, I think, that hopefully you will find captures our discussion.
Does it take out the Medicaid piece?
Yeah. So Katie has been Office of Legislative Counsel. The first three sections of the bill are the same as the bill that came over from Senate Health and Welfare. So you have a finding section about the peer certification. You have the development of the program in section 2. And then in section 3, you have the chapter that sort of sets up and maintains the certification program going forward. What you don't have is the two sections on the Medicaid state plan and the Medicaid match. And also the specific appropriation in this section of the bill has been pulled out. And then, if you remember, the second half of the bill dealt with the peer respite centers. So that language has been removed, and in its place, there's new language on page 10, section 4. This is the peer operated respite and community centers model, and this is findings language in subsection A. That General Assembly finds peer operated respite models in community centers such as Alyssum, located in Rochester, Another Way, located in Montpelier, and Pathways Community Center, located in Burlington, can serve as alternative care settings for patients with psychiatric diagnoses who do not require inpatient admission. And second, peer-operated respite models in community centers provide residential or community-based services that can result in lowered rates of Medicaid-dependent hospitalizations and health expenditures for participants. And then the ask is in subsection B. So to the extent that AHS finds the following in subdivisions 1 and 2, it shall include a funding request for peer-operated respite models in community centers and subsequent budget proposals. So if it finds first that additional peer-operated respite centers and community centers shall be developed with state Medicaid matching funds to provide necessary program capacity, and if it also finds that viable proposals with demonstrable community support are advanced, and the agency finds that these proposals will reduce state program costs.
Can I ask about demonstrable community support? What does that entail?
It's not laid out as a process in this. It's the plain meaning of the words.
But would it be like an organization submits a letter saying we support this, or?
There's a demonstration of support from the community. It could look like many community members coming together asking for something, maybe a community identifying a location for a specific.
The language by the governing board of the town, for example.
Okay.
The language is pretty open.
Was that in the original?
No, this is language that was added in this.
This was the replacement to the findings and the program that's the
Right.
version from Senate Health and Welfare set up.
So this is really articulating our support and understanding of what these community peer-operated respite and community centers, what role they can play. At this point, with the Medicaid cap so uncertain, and not knowing that we have money to actually expand the service, but we want to get, and many of these actually peered supports are working within our DAs as well. I know in Northeast Kingdom. So the certification would move forward. So we've removed the funding. It was $500,000 for certification, and I think 2 million for adding, setting up more centers.
So this doesn't preclude us, we're gonna have the money, but it doesn't preclude us from, in the budgetary process, if we found $500,000, putting money in for it.
That's right, it could be, that's right, it's just like all the other funding requests that we have. So, you had made a motion yesterday.
And this is my
As a
motion
cap-
now.
Okay, so Senator Westman has moved, the amendment that,
Good
Katie
work,
McGlynn has just
I would
reviewed
agree
with
with
us. Second, Senator Starr.
Yep, fine.
Okay, so,
I sit right beside Richie, so I can count.
so,
He does all the time.
so we'll, vote the motion first. The amendment, the motion to amend first.
Senator Valent, Senator Baruth, yes. Senator Nitka,
Yes.
Senator Sears.
I don't know where he is.
Oh, I know where he is.
Senator Starr,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes. Meeting with
Okay. And
Commissioner of Social Services.
Oh, right, John Brown.
And
We'll hold the vote
Yeah.
and get it.
Okay.
Now, the reporter,
do
I'm,
you want to do
Your
it?
mental health.
I'm
but
mental health,
I'll do it if you want.
okay,
Do we have to do the bill now?
we do, we have to do the bill.
I'll move the bill as amended.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Senator Valent, Senator Baruth. Yes. Senator Nitka,
Yes.
Senator Sears, Senator Starr,
Yes.
Senator Westman. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes,
I thought you were waiting.
and the reporter,
I was dreaming about putting my feet up on the chair.
and so, thank you very much, Katie, I know your time is really.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
So I'm the reporter.
Yes, we'll let Senator Westman.
I'll-
Senator Weston is the reporter?
I'll do the one on the 5 million that we put under H-Rock.
Okay. Would you like me to get Senator Bray? Okay.
Is that on the Act 250?
This is a yes, S 234. And right, grab him, I'll give you some paperwork. Here is 230, you have a copy, and here is the amendment.
It is.
Do we have any others that we could move very quickly?
I think you've pretty much gone through it. Oh, you mean on that list? I will defer to Stephanie on that.
We have a vehicle that's totally.
Good point.
And Senator Bray is ready, so I'll just grab it.
What about the environmental justice one? Stephanie, is that one that maybe you could type of?
I can't.
Sure, we'll
Sure.
if you want
I can explain what the amendment is, which is simply the appropriations.
Yeah, all right.
And I'm not sure if that is true.
Would you like-
I can't answer.
We didn't actually have a presentation, did we, of the bill?
You guys did your part.
The track.
I don't know if he did or not.
To be exact.
Okay, Senator Bray?
Maybe he
So
has
we
to go
could
to
have
it.
not done the vehicle, and we had not done the vehicle. But we.
In other words, we got it so much earlier,
We had vehicles.
offline chat or
Going forward. So they have a vehicle. to do this, And I think that's worth a lot.
Senator Bray is on his way.
And it's not.
Okay, we are still live. I'm gonna
switch
switch it right
You
in.
have a little doggy and coyotes.
Do you want me to give you a copy of this for Senator Bray as well?
The dog's on you on both sides.
Believe me, when I go into my office at school, there's a woman there, the most.
Okay, and there we have, and just a reminder, we are live.
We're on
We
live.
are live.
Her name isn't Brianna.
If we did nothing, they would have no no means to.
But those are.
Oh, so here is Senator Bray, and we're gonna have you do a double header, Senator Bray.
Should I get my 148 stuff to you then?
Whose coffee is this?
Yes,
Throw it out.
Okay. Thank you. Let me grab my other folder. Notes,
226. We have an amendment on that too. You have an amendment on that?
But we are letting that 6 weeks go and that. So that's what happening.
There's a message for you that's on this desk here.
I don't know what all this, these are all on 234. All right, so Senator Bray is here, and our first bill that we're going to take up is S-234, which is changes to Act 250. But while he's here, we also have S-148, which Senator Bray and I have had some discussion, and we've also had some other communications from advocate groups around the requested staffing and what we think would be reasonable to get the process started, particularly as it relates to the federal requirements that A&R has got to meet relative to environmental justice. So we will deal with the appropriation only on S-148, and we'll share the amendment with you, which is to fund the mapping. It's a reassignment of a position to help support it. And so there's a change, obviously, in what everybody would have liked it as an opportunity to get more positions, but this is not the way to do it, or the bill to do it.
This is a skinnier version.
It is. So we appreciate your coming in. So Act 250 has an appropriation, and we will do what we always do, and that is take that out for now and deal with it in the big bill. But we're getting a lot of telephone calls about the bill.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's responding to it about what particular feature of this. I think the most controversial feature in it is the reinstatement, in essence, of the road rule. So maybe that's what's drawn fire. I don't know. I'm getting a totally generic message that says, don't vote against 234, but they don't say why.
Can you just give us a little briefing on the road rule?
Sure. Do you want me
Please.
to do a larger review of the bill, or
No, we can go through,
I'm happy to do it as much as.
we've got to go through just the high points of it, but our function here is to look at the money, which we will look at very briefly by pulling it out and adding it to our list.
So how about if I do the 60,000 for overview?
That would be great.
Yeah. So sections 1 through 7 are related to municipal law, changes to municipal law and zoning in order to support more housing projects in more designated areas.
Some of those infill developments.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all related to that timely issues of permits, no response from the municipality equals an approval, et cetera. They're all designed to keep things moving. The first section that's not related to housing is section 7 on page 11, and that is on forest blocks. You can find it bad for as long as I've been in the Senate, actually. An Act 250 criterion that has an eye on maintaining quality forests and habitat. With the omission of it's kind of strange because 75% of Vermont is forest land, but we never had. We have a forest soils criterion from the original version of Act 250. It's still there. It's almost never invoked because honestly, no one really knows any truly helpful way to use it. So it says that we are adding a new criterion to Act 250 that focuses on forest blocks and habitat.
But does it put, does it put restrictions on an owner of a forest plot from selling that?
No, it doesn't change any,
Just as a definition of what a forest plot is?
right, and actually because of the complexity of it and the controversy, rather than try to define it in the bill, we call in section 9 for a rulemaking led by the NRB along with ANR. So they're going to usually we write our own criteria. In this case, it was complicated enough that we thought the rulemaking process was a better way to create these definitions. And so there's a rulemaking in section 9, beginning on page 13, that will establish what we mean by exactly.
That isn't circumventing our authority as a legislature and turning it over to,
Anything they do has got to be weighed against legislative intent.
And
So I guess that's the question at hand is the intent sufficiently expressed so that the rules can be weighed against that requirement?
And maybe by nature, as well as by having served on LCAR, I'm keenly interested in how well we place guardrails around our rulemaking. So that's why the call for rulemaking, sometimes it might say something like, ANR shall write rules on X. But in this case, we have a page and a half of guidance on how that rulemaking shall be conducted, what questions shall be asked, what definitions need to be developed. So I think I would never want to be delegating authority without direction. I think it's direction.
So this, this is answered, Alan's question about road, you said roads, is that in a different section?
Different section.
Okay.
So section 10, moving right along, is the resource mapping that the chair referenced earlier. Basically, we want to know where forests are. We want to have up-to-date maps, and this talks about support for creating. We already have some mapping, but there's newer technology that allows for much more accurate maps, and they need revision. That is section 11, the road rule.
Can I just ask you to go back to forest block? Is there a rough idea of how large a forest block, how large a parcel of land would be before it might be considered a forest block?
It says how they're further defined.
Where is that?
That's on page 13. In the rulemaking, how forest blocks and habitat are further defined, including size, location, and function.
It's pretty wild and say including their size, and could it be your 2 acres?
There is, I think basically because ANR is engaged in this, along with actually every other interested party, that there's going to be a more scientific approach to defining the forest block. Exactly how large, our committee was not well suited to answer that. It would have been an arbitrary answer from us. Rulemaking is a much better venue for deciding.
So everybody who reads this will be worried that their sinking parcel will be in it.
I think of small, our small farms. They might have 200 acres of land go with their little farm, 50 count, but 100 of them are forests. Well, are they gonna get restricted in some way or in any way, shape or form, or?
You won't be surprised to learn that agriculture and forestry are, this is only for development. This is the rulemaking on forest blocks is only going to be invoked someone's developing.
Oh,
So Bobby's concerned about the protections or the exclusions related to ag and forestry are not affected, right?
At the risk of going too deep, can you just say briefly for the committee where this came from?
This language?
Yes.
Rulemaking?
No, the overall concept of forest blocks, and the Commissioner of Forest and Parks has been working on this in this direction since 2000.
Are you on the roads yet?
Not yet.
No, that's
Okay.
next.
Not yet.
blocks.
That's next.
No, all right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, because I thought somebody said road.
We're coming up.
We backed him up.
We're on the road to roads. So in 2014, the Senate asked the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation to come back with a report and recommendations. And one of the chief recommendations was there were 5 different categories. We worked in every category other than the Act 250 category. And that was to define for Act 250 a meaningful definition of forest block and habitat. So that's probably origin.
It looks like the roads are page 16. Are you getting comments about roads? Is that what? you're-
No, I haven't, but I'm concerned about what this might do.
So the road rule was repealed back, I think, in 2005. It had operated for about 25 years. And the trade-off at the time was the trigger for the number of units that constitute development and subdivision were reduced from 10 to 6. Or basically, there's that split, right? The 1 acre, 10 acre town split. But basically, that definition for towns without zoning got redefined then and brought down. Everything till then let you do 10 units or up to 10 units. And then that was lowered, you could do 5 units or less, or up to 150. So that the road rule went away. The definition and just the mechanics of it. If you're developing a road or a driveway or a combination of them, the driveway itself can be 800 feet long, or the road and driveway can be up to 2,000 feet long without triggering Act 250. And the reason we have both is that when we just said 800, people would say, well, that's actually a road, and then my driveway, they would develop one road all the way into this house, and then they would say, this part is a road, and this second half is actually my driveway. So they went around the intent of the law, labeling something that was one thing as 2 different things. So now we just say, okay, but you're calling it a road, your drive, if they add up to more than 2,000 feet, or just your drive is 800 feet, you are, and you're
2,000 feet long.
It is, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
A lot of trouble.
right. 2,000 feet, I was thinking about a floor report, how was I gonna explain it? If you stood in front of the State House and started walking, you'd walk all the way down to Main Street, take a right, by the time you get to Sarducci's, then that's your driveway.
Also 2,000.
That's 2,000. So it's not the average drive that's gonna trigger this. And part of the reason for including a provision at all is the commissioner's testimony that a drive into a forest block or a road into a forest block, that even if it's a single home, that it disrupted up to 35 acres of habitat. So
Well, is there such a thing in here? You know, a lot of the good woodland sets back away from the road.
Yep.
Is there such a thing as a woods road or a
Yeah,
logging
it's-
road or?
It's in DB on lines 12 and 13.
Not a permanent, but a, a road to get to that wood lot.
Oh, well, I think 12 and 13, Richie just said, page 17, a road primarily used for farming or forestry purposes.
Probably Sam,
Huh?
are they?
Yes.
It shall not apply to unless it's used for residential. So I think,
Yes.
so
That's the bottom.
I'm gonna have to keep going here because, we're, and maybe people will have feelings about the bill. We're gonna have to move it, because of the money, which we're gonna amend out. But,
I'll step on the gas yet again. The next thing is wood products. So we understood that people running mills need to get wood in and out at unusual times of day outside normal hours of operation, especially during mud season, when you need to get in and out when things are cold and frozen. So we provide accommodations for that. Also, if you're someone who has, you're creating pellets or something, you may need to be supplying someone who's running out of pellets at 3 in the morning. You might, just like the fuel truck, go get called out early. So we let these guys leave their facilities.
What?
You got one grain mill.
Oh, here's,
he supports that too.
with that too.
Yeah, trust me.
Only the wood
I'm
products
his
that carry their own
authorization.
water in this one.
Smurf's always saying I need hearing aids, and I say he won't, but
Yeah,
Okay.
all the time, getting out in the morning.
I did think you said sports betting.
So I'm gonna move right along. Bobby, you've looked at section 15 over agricultural businesses.
Yep.
Yeah, and then 16 is the appropriation that we're stripping out.
Right, so 15 is actually, Senator Starr and I put a bill in about trying to find a way to create these new way of handling large scale ag businesses. And that's their 16. There are two things going on. There's two reports at the end of the study. One, it is ACCD runs designated programs that help incentivize housing in designated areas, amongst other things. And they have grown up sort of ad hoc, I suppose you could say, over time. There's now 5 different versions. Some you have to have first, and then the second designation overlays an underlying designation. There's been a question as to whether or not this is the most efficient way and the most clear way to run that program. So let's study it and sort that out.
On page 21, Chris.
Yep.
1-7. Over there where it says located on properties already operating, could the period go there instead of as farms?
Well, it's a report.
Yeah, they'd report back, but
In other words, some
Maybe-
agricultural businesses that are not farms.
yes, because they're getting crowded because they're consolidating and so their yards shrink or their yards, the neighbors.
You know, but it says apply, including those located, so it's not exclusive. It just says.
Yeah.
So I think your concern is addressed and because it shall be applied to agricultural businesses, which is pretty broad. And then the other, including those,
So those are included.
Yeah.
Comma.
They could be,
They could be, yeah, they are.
just not articulate.
And then you go on to say, and as well as.
Including those.
And that little phrase is actually part of what drove the whole discussion, because there's a farm that now wants to open up. If it's fully implemented, it would have something like 36 businesses all co-located on that farm, around a cluster of buildings.
Yeah.
And they all have a relationship to food or agriculture in some way or another, but they're clearly businesses.
Oh, you mean in Richmond?
As you walk out of Shelburne, right?
Yeah,
The old Hinsdale
the
farm.
Hinsdale Farm was the top of the hill.
The
Northern
big
Farm,
white barn.
big red roof, right at the crest, is before you go down into Charlotte.
All right, I'm gonna just,
Can you just ask,
move.
Yeah.
can I just ask one question? With regard to existing tracts of land that are already under Act 250 and are approved but haven't built on, is this on page 20 at the bottom? Does that impact that line 14? Page 1. In other words, they aren't developed yet, but they're approved to be developed if someone wanted to.
So when,
Construction of improvements. In other words, someone has,
I want to, council is here, so I just want to double check. I don't know that once you already have your permit, if the law is amended subsequently, the law.
I think that permit controls.
Right, and it was the law that was at the time that you had an administrative application carried forward.
That's my understanding, that the permit was controlled.
okay,
Yeah,
And
once-
it
once
wouldn't,
you
it
find-
wouldn't be invalidated or nullified by the subsequent change.
That seems but
I'm gonna keep us going. We only have like 5 more bills to go. And Senator Westman is really concerned. He had a neighbor who died last night in a
Yes.
fire. And so,
Saw that on the news.
so we,
I have to leave. but
and you have to
I'm
leave,
sure-
so I really, we really need to focus on the money. And so,
there is an expense related to having, the section 17, study, but it's not called out within a separate appropriation. So I just want to make sure that I wasn't failing to highlight the fact that
it'll be part of the legislative budget, but I think what we have to do is our standard language about not getting paid if you're already getting paid.
But I think it's all legislators, isn't it?
Yes, 8 members.
Yeah, so it's just.
It doesn't say 8 members. I didn't know. I was thinking it could be members of the public, the way it's written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I didn't interpret that. It was, what was the intent?
Was it all legislative or?
the intent was that it was all legislative.
Oh, then we just need to consist of 8 okay.
8 legislators.
Yeah, thank you.
Legislators to figure that sucker out.
4 and 4, huh?
So we had one of the thorniest areas, and actually, I think sort of one of the most troublesome areas for Act 250 in the last 5 years, something like that, longer than that. Has been the operations of the district commissions and the board itself. The board has lost many people, and the district commissions, I'd say, are not necessarily feeling fully supported. And now we're also talking about a surge of applications coming through because of like housing and hard money. So this is a longer term answer, but that the board could, operations of the board and the district commission, I think could be. There were discussions about this in great length. The Act 250 commission of 3 and 4 years ago. So the concept was that no big commissions have legislators sit down and come back with a recommendation so that it leads to a bill introduced at the beginning of next budget.
All right, 250 commission at home. I went through permitting for commercial building 2 years ago. Took me about a week to go through do the application. They reviewed it almost instantly. And then they have to post it for 30 days. So it was like 40 or 42 days from the time I started on it.
It'll go fast unless you have a neighbor who appeals.
Yeah.
That's what, that's really where the delay would be
Really
associated.
went good.
So we have an amendment, Stephanie, do I have it here? You do, okay. Need a little more paper here. So we're gonna strike section 16 and
Which is,
the appropriations.
Yep.
And we will add that to our list.
Yeah.
Of,
The
things,
requested things.
yeah, requested money.
And we also need a technical amendment to change that section 17 on the legislators.
Yes, we do, to make it clear, because I was reading and it could be members of the public, which sometimes we do. So, okay, so, do I have a motion to move the bill, move the amendment, which would include removing section 16 that carries the appropriation and the small change to clarify that the study committee is a legislative study committee, and we'll just insert, shall consist of 8 legislative members, 4 from House, 4 from Senate.
so,
So Senator Ruth has moved the amendment, correct section 16, and add legislative, seconded by Alice.
Senator Ballin. Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Mitchell.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
No.
Senator Stark. Yes. Senator Weston.
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
And then the bill itself.
And now we're going to move the bill as amended. Do I have a motion to move the bill as amended? Senator Nitka. A second.
Senator Ballin. Senator Baruch.
I need a second to
Oh,
move the
sorry.
bill. All right, Senator.
Senator Ballin. Senator Baruch. Senator Nitka.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Stark.
Yes.
Senator Weston.
No.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you vote against this in committee? Now, and like other bills, we're just, a vote here doesn't necessarily obligate you to how you want to vote on the floor, but we're moving this out.
Yeah.
So normally I would ask you, but Alice, you do natural resources, so I'll ask Senator Nitka to be the reporter.
Okay.
Okay.
legal information, you know, with the counselor.
So Ellen will bring the revised amendment for you, Alice.
Yes, very good.
Because the
Very
one you
good.
got,
Yeah.
that was actually So now, while we have Senator Bray here, that's 148, environmental justice.
I thought we already had justice. Didn't we do that this morning, doing something about justice?
More justice and more money.
Um,
Madam Chair, you were mentioning how fast actually it could be if once there was an appeal. One of the governor's topics is actually handling of appeals.
In this bill?
No, when that committee, if it meets, one of the things is how do you improve the appeal process? Oh, it's more time.
I got one.
you did, you have good neighbors, I guess, or no neighbors.
So the S-148, people might want to read at their leisure, which I don't think happens, and there's no leisure for the moment, but the first 6 pages.
Do we have that one?
We do.
148
We do,
are
We don't.
findings.
We don't.
She is the.
but you had read it, it has to.
Oh,
be-
yeah, I read that.
Are findings, and
There are a lot of findings.
so the Bill Proper income law starts on page 6. So that, for me, in case, I'll start at the highest level. This is a bill about environmental justice. And the thing I think that is throwing some people for a loop a little bit is that this the group that Senator Ron Hinsdale worked with, and the group has continued to work over the last year. And this is, I'd say, environment with a capital E, meaning everything from your quality of housing, education, access to health care, as well as, clean water, air, green spaces. So, and as when I was describing that with Secretary Moore, he said that one of their challenges is that they're the agency of environment with a lowercase e. They are not everything that you that gets addressed in this bill. So there is a little bit of a challenge that I think is going to get addressed. Is how if this bill moves to the House, there'll be more conversations about how to implement in a practicable way a bill that's really quite exhaustive. I mean, it aims to bring the consciousness of impacts on people who are referred to as environmental justice population throughout the state and as impacted by every agency, every operating area of government. Do you want me to? So the first several sections are about creating definitions, like what do we mean by an environmental benefit or an environmental burden? What's environmental justice? And then an environmental justice population. So the first group of people defined, before getting into any details, so the first idea is that if there's a group of people that are not faring sort of equally well under Vermont programs, first we need to do two things. One is define who that is and define all the programs that are that have an impact on the population. So one of the first things that happens in the bill is environmental justice is defined based on census data and who's in the first cut section. It says if your annual median income of your households not more than 8% of the state median household income. If you are a person of color or an indigenous person, if you're in a census block in which persons of color and indigenous people comprise at least 6% or more of the population. And or if you're in a census block where at least 1% or more of households have limited English proficiency.
Those things you can measure by count.
Right. So this
But the income part,
the
income part, it's nice to put percentages in of the state median income, but so then you never have to change it. But most people reading that don't have a clue what the state median income is.
Well, it's the same thing when we use 100% of federal poverty.
Yeah.
Because it's always being updated. So we have heard that about half the state population would fall under
this.
because, and it would vary by region, obviously, because some areas of the state are have higher incomes than others, or have different configurations of minority
So
population.
that's the only way to do it.
That's how they're doing it.
That's the proposal, but this is actually a first cut at defining that. Part of what happens later in the bill is rulemaking oriented to allowing for revision of it and tuning of it over time. So on page 9, section 6002 defines, we don't have a state policy on environmental justice, so it's a policy definition.
And I think, just to bring it home, certain communities have been very disproportionately affected. Think about the Bennington community with the PFAS and the manufacturing. They're probably in mill towns. Those towns were for decades subject to pollutants and so forth. Or it can be the location of where in housing for lower income households reside. So it's, or if you look at where interstates have been built, they have gone through, oftentimes gone through the poorest neighborhoods. So this is really trying to bring a consciousness around who is being impacted it has very lofty goals because we know that certainly when we're getting into economic justice, we make decisions right here that influence that. And that gets into the level of financial assistance we're providing, our tax policies. So this is why I think the Secretary of A&R was saying, you know, this is a very, this is a vision here that is much broader than environmental as their mission and their expertise is targeted. So that's where we had some discussion.
It is, but the Agency of Natural Resources is under federal orders to do this now. So this came out of the Natural Resources Agency because they're under federal order to have to do this.
And that's
So that's
why-
why it started.
And that's why when we get to the amendment on the appropriation, unlike some of the others where we completely strip it out, we are talking about 500,000 general fund to, for the mapping tool that's needed. And then also 200,000 because we are funding 2 positions because we have no choice. We have to do this work to fulfill this legal requirement. And so unlike others, we could be subject to priority setting. At least this first phase is something the state has to do because we're subject to that federal requirement to undertake this
I
work.
mean, the 3 million.
No, yes, the 3 million is being replaced with one time, where there's an amendment here.
200,000.
It's, there's 500,000 for the general fund, one time, to the agency for the mapping that's required as the first step. And the second is 200,000 to fund the 2
Okay.
positions. So it's a very different appropriation. And we did that because we started getting feedback saying agencies were, the level of staffing that they were trying to secure through this bill was really overstated. And we actually got that from some of the advocates that were for the bill.
Does the last sentence pertain to the previous sentence? On the
On
amendment,
the amendment,
yeah. This shall fund an expired position, so that's.
no, an
the two-
existing position, they have an existing vacant position.
They have an existing position that's funded in the budget for civil rights and environmental policy. So this switches the funding to this bill for that position. And then it allows them to transfer a position from their existing core positions and fill a new environmental justice position.
That's the 200,000.
Yeah, the funded positions.
So the net new budgetary increase, although it's 700 here, the net new is 600
Because we already, part of it was traveling in the big bill.
And I just asked about the amendment. Why, so we're appropriating the 200,000, the 500 is one time.
Yes, yeah.
So the one-time money I can understand, but in the normal scheme of what we would do is if it's ongoing money, it would be in the budget. And
That's
and
why
we
I'm saying this is,
so this is out of our norm.
that's right, and we're tracking it. Just to let you know, we know we were
Track the
tracking.
500 and the one time.
And whatever we say on the floor, we're doing the 200 because we're under federal.
That's
order.
right, that,
And there is no discretion.
that's right.
Okay.
That is the thinking behind this request.
Where was the one that I just mentioned?
What?
So, Stephanie, you just mentioned 100, where's that?
100 is already in the budget
It's
request.
existing in the budget request before us from the governor. They have a civil rights position that they're fully funding in the
So they
budget.
don't need the 700.
They need 600.
They need 600.
But we wanted to make it clear what the resources were being applied to support this work, and that's why we pulled it out of that budget and had it here, and
Oh, okay, that's
and
the-
funded the vacant position to help support this required work.
So when you see when the Senate Appropriations bill doesn't, the committee does its big bill, you'll see the adjustment in the line item because it's already done here for that one position.
Given the amount of time that we have left, I would move that we amend the bill seen in draft 1.1, 317, 2022 by EMC.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to move the bill favorably as amended. And
Even
that's,
though I have a number of questions for the floor.
all right, you save them. This weekend, you can write them up.
Well, I already know one.
Yeah, but you better write it or you'll forget it.
Page 2, number 6.
Okay,
Page 2, number 6.
so he's saving the question
Yeah, he's saving it for you.
because
Then you have job.
because we're really
We
short
need to
on
get
time.
moving.
So we have an amendment and a motion to approve the amendment, which would deal with funding the mapping and funding the positions. And the motion, who wants to make that motion? Senator, Senator Sears.
And I second.
Okay, Senator Weston. So shall we vote the amendment? Call the roll.
Senator Ballard, Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Midkiff,
Yes.
Senator Seat,
Yes.
Senator Stock, Senator Weston,
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
I'll move the bill favorably.
Okay, Senator Sears seconded.
Senator Ballard, Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Midkiff,
Yes.
Senator Seat,
Yes.
Senator Stock,
Yes.
Senator Weston,
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes,
Okay.
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When you're doing business, my hair is a little shorter, but it's not entirely visible.
Okay, so.
And the next one. That's right.
That one is here. That's taking out the tax credits from the housing bill.
What?
That's taking out the tax credits from the housing bill.
Okay, who's here to,
Am I the reporter on this one?
yes, you're mental health, you're environmental. you're-
Yeah. Sorry. Well, I do. Or your monitors themselves.
You want to do it?
She would rather do it.
Alice, well,
Doesn't matter, she wants to do it on that.
who's got the amendment on this?
Chrissy, to give me the amendment on.
One moment, I just have computer difficulties. I will be right with you. Which one are we working on? 286? I'll talk with you.
226.
226, hang on here. Yes, I do. 226.
Yeah.
You got your busy dinner.
Amendment.
Okay, this is,
You might want to ask her when she did the draft.
okay, all right,
Can you email them or shut on my computer? Do you know what you said?
she's right here, right in order.
This is the kind of day I'm having, Ellen.
Sorry.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Alice,
Yes.
Rich is on natural resources, he just asked, are you comfortable doing the environmental justice, or do you want me to do it? Yeah, whatever.
If you want it, fine.
No,
If not, we can go to-
If you want to do it, that'd be great.
Yeah, fine, I'll do it.
Okay, Phil, Senator Westman is gonna be the reporter, on S 148.
All right, Chrissy.
Yes,
Now, we're,
It'll be Senator Westman, so Senator Midkiff.
Senator Weston on 148.
yeah.
Great, I will
Alice
change
is
the
doing the other one. All right, so let's go to 226, and we have Senator Sorokin is here. And this is the amendment that we had, which would strip out the tax credits. And so, if you want to go through this amendment quickly to give us assurances that it does what we discussed yesterday. Thank you.
Sure, so Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. So the first instance of amendment is striking all of section 7 of the bill. Section 7 amends the tax credit for affordable housing statute, and it would have allowed VHFA to adopt guidelines to provide grants for first generation home buyers. And so that language is being removed.
And that was a tax credit?
It's part, yes, it's part of the affordable tax, the affordable housing tax credit. Yeah.
All right.
That's the one that grew by over 5 years.
Okay. To 5 million.
No,
A million a year to 5 million?
that was the governor's proposal. The proposal in the bill was 250 growing to
Oh, that's right.
1.25.
All right, so that removes that for now. We're putting it on our list. And how that can be accommodated in the second instance is,
It removes language from 32 VSA 5930 EE, which is the section on the downtown and village center tax credit program. This section 14 was proposing to increase the cap on those tax credits from 3 million to 5 million, including with a $1 million per year for neighborhood development projects, neighborhood development area projects.
okay, so the price tag on that was,
That one was $2 million. It was moving it from 3 million to 5 million. So you're simply leaving it at 3 million by doing this amendment.
until, unless
And then
we,
I let Senator Cummings know we were doing these amendments and that they would probably be revisiting these tax credits in other revenue-related vehicles next
which
door.
is what we said that they would have to do. And the third instance is amendment.
Because the sections are being renumbered, it just adjusts the effective date to properly reflect the numbers that have changed.
So in essence, what we've done is remove the two tax credits, then we'll have to see if they can be covered by our finance committee. And we are leaving in the appropriation to help the towns with the bylaw update, and that was 650, I believe.
That is the 50 one.
Yeah, okay. So that funding does remain because that's been pretty important work to support this housing development. So do I have a motion to move? Okay, Senator Starr moved, Senator LaRue seconded the amendment.
Senator Fallon, Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Mitchell,
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes, with reservation.
Do we have that bill? Do we have that bill for?
Senator Starr,
Did we
Senator Lester.
receive the bill actually here?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, Senator Sorokin presented it
Yes,
yesterday.
Oh, okay, that's still.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
We go to Senator Sears now for his explanation.
Oh, no, I was just my reservation is that the section in there that deals with the contractor licensing,
Oh, right.
that is gonna get vetoed, and that's my reservation about here. Why are we bothering?
We can't take that up. Can we take it up?
Well, I suppose we could, but
I don't think we want to.
I don't think.
First of all,
the
we
chair wants-
passed it at 2,500 last year.
Yeah.
The House moved it to 35 and now it's up to 5.
Now it's about 5, thank God.
So,
Most of them moved like.
all right, did we still
Motion
need,
to move the bill, okay.
all right, Senator Baruch moved the bill favorably as amended. A second?
Second.
Okay, Senator Fallon, Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Mitchell,
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes,
Senator Starr. Yeah. Senator Lester.
No,
Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
okay.
All right, thank you, Ellen.
Well, hopefully.
Ellen's gonna get the amendment on 234 for Senator Nitka.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who was the report?
On housing, who does?
Housing.
Senator Commerce, who is Commerce?
Yeah, if that's
Right,
Senator.
Commerce.
I think it's Senator.
It might be Senator Brown.
Just so you
Oh,
know,
no, it is back.
just so you know, that Act 250 bill is the same thing. The road rules, the governor, that's office that said it's very controversial and they're going to veto the bill just over that one piece. And the rest of the bill is fine. But, and run the risk of killing that whole Act 250 bill just because of the road rule.
If I know what the governor's doing, I can deal with it.
Right.
S30, we had no idea.
But they were very
she's so
clear.
overloaded.
They
Find
said,
somebody.
We hate
When
this.
I did, when I did housing, I have the housing community development.
You do, well then,
Okay,
we'll give you
sounds good.
this. Yeah, you have ACCD, then this is where that.
Yeah, but then by the time you finish reporting the
Senator
bill,
Starr.
you might want to vote against it.
All right, next, 285. And this was a $5 million. Senator Lyons came in. And we had some discussion around 5 million and a sense of needing more specificity. Also, locus of accountability between the board and AHS. So,
Makeup for me? Thank you.
So we're trying to find out.
no, we're just left it.
Oh, because it's not from the general.
This is the amendment we have now, and I've let Senator Lyons know that we are keeping the $5 million appropriation, but our concern was around the locus of accountability between the board and AHS, really sequencing the importance, because in order to make a lot of our financing work, particularly under our waiver, Medicare is a major component, and the board and the agency have to orchestrate this work carefully, and the level of specificity in the bill around what is community engagement, what community, what you're engaging around, et cetera, seem to be so vague that what this does is keep the appropriation, but has it go to the Agency of Human Services. So there's a locus of accountability, and that we would have an opportunity to have more specificity around the work that's going to be completed, and that it would have to be brought to the Health Reform Oversight Committee, which is the committee chairs. It's Finance, Ways and Means, Appropriations, Health, and Health and Welfare, and Senator Westman's our other senator on the side, because Representative Pugh got added to that committee. So this is what it does, is really put some fences or some definition around if we're moving the money out. And we've talked about the need to deal with a different cost reimbursement methodology, but how to do it in a way that we're having a greater sense and opportunity to oversee how that work is being defined, and it would come back to the Oversight Committee for approval.
That's 285.
What?
That's 285.
This is 285, yes. And the board had sent a memo in saying we'd like $5 million. And that's what we were asking questions about, well, you know, how it would work and so forth. So Senator Weston.
So since this is another 5 million that we're appropriating from the general fund, is not in the same vein as us saying we're ripping everybody's general fund dollars. We're doing this in light of the potential changes to the global commitment.
Global, but not all payers up at the end of this year. The
Well,
all payer agreement is, so the global commitment actually, it got extended, it was at the end of last year.
yeah,
And the all payer is up at the end of this year, so they're in the process of right now on the all payer model. And what Medicare's participation.
And Medicare is going to be really critical.
so the all payer model ends at the end of the calendar, or at the end of the fiscal.
Calendar. December 22.
So this puts us in a more of an emergency category, you know, because we normally would put the 5 million in the budget.
And it does with a little bit of the money that go out before October 1st, but HROC would be meeting in sometime in September to actually allow more, to review the plan, approve the plan, and then how the remaining money flows after that would be the way it's stacked.
Okay, but, you know, that still gets into the, if it's not September, if we appropriate it in the budget, it still would have got there, but, okay.
And it's one-time money, and we know that the waiver negotiations and the
Well,
budget neutrality issues, you know.
That's helpful, it's not ongoing base fund.
No. What the waiver negotiations and getting Medicare in as a, you know, payer, most people don't realize that, for example, our SASH program we've been able to fund that because of that all payer
We should,
waiver.
I said to you yesterday, I think this committee ought to get a short presentation on where we are in bumping up against the Medicaid cap.
Well, that's why this work is so important.
No,
Right.
I get that, but I don't think most people in the legislature have a clue.
No, they don't. Although I did say that yesterday next door.
Like you said, they
Didn't I?
didn't.
Yes, but at some level, we have to highlight that because this is not only a general fund problem that we're running against. These people that think we get Medicaid match for everything is,
Well, that's the old thing. And it used to be that we had so much capacity under budget neutrality, we could never come
right,
into
and
the general
we're
fund.
bumping right up against it.
Yeah, and so that's
How
why,
close
huh?
It's not, we're
Still trying to figure it out.
yeah, we'll know as we go along that the extension is through the end of June. We should have a pretty clear picture at some point. But I assume negotiations will probably extend all the way through then, but the proposals, we could be living in a much different, lower capacity. Right now, the proposals for trend are much lower than they have been in the
They're
previous.
going down.
And that waiver is so important. We have over $100 million of expenditures we get Medicaid match for because of the waiver that would otherwise be general fund.
Or would have to be,
Pretty much, we were,
or would have to be reduced.
Oh, yeah,
we
right.
were within 8% of the cap before COVID came. And then since COVID, it's been this whole new world, but we're headed right back into even closer.
The one thing I haven't figured out yet from listening to health and welfare is why our hospitals are in such dire straits and we pump hundreds of millions of dollars into them and they're still, they
Right.
can't keep up. I
This
mean,
is one of the conundrums. Everybody says it's costing so much, and yet we're saying, but you're on the verge of bankruptcy, and the question is the money maldistributed? And then, of course, is how do you redistribute it? But I want to move this as an amendment, if I could have a
So
motion.
move,
Okay.
the amendment.
Okay, so I have a motion to move the amendment,
also,
seconded by Senator Starr.
Senator Fallon, Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Edgar,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Stone,
yes.
Senator West.
Yep.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
And then,
I'll
I'll
move the bill as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Fallon, Senator Baruch, yes. Senator Nitka,
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yep.
Senator Starr,
Yes.
Senator West,
Yes.
Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
And this is Richie.
No, I have Medicaid.
Oh, okay.
Who's her?
Do you want me to do this or
No, I
would you rather?
I don't know.
Okay.
you told me one.
That's when you.
I told you.
Reporter and vote.
We got
So, Senator
six,
Starr?
0, 1. I had one vote against the bill, so
Yeah, you had 511.
5-1-1.
Thank you.
That's what I told you.
Okay, you did.
All right, so now we're down to pensions.
We have pensions in the wage bill, there's two bills left in the committee. We have a little bit of an issue on staff availability. Jen Carvey was taking over the amendment, the amendment for the pension bill on that intent section. But she has not gotten it completed yet, and Becky Wasserman is stuck getting the capital bill out of that committee in the House. That was the main issue.
What about waiting?
In waiting, we could,
Jim DeMarais, I said text him when he's ready and he can zoom in for us.
so we could do the waiting bill.
Okay, why don't we do the waiting
Let me
bill?
see if I can get him and,
I'm gonna go in 10 minutes.
All right.
I don't have.
Call sheet for the week.
you do not want to pull it, we'll put it back in, but let me just get it for you. And first, let me see if I can get Jim.
I'm for the pensions. I don't see we have interest.
That's the only change in that bill from the other day would be on that intent section.
About raising the COLA for teachers.
once we get 80% funded.
I don't have any choice but to vote for it. We have to do it.
We don't get
So I
back
think we
in the
just take a
hole.
vote on that. We trust you to make sure it reads the right way.
What, the amendment?
The amendment on the pension bill, because we all know what it's
It
gonna
is a
say.
strike all amendment from this committee.
Yep. We all know what it's gonna say.
Well, it had to be a strike all because we made
So
some
it
other changes. What is being, the final change is to have the right language around the intent out in the future, if we get to 80% funding, to start moving up the COLA increase for teachers, which is now 50%. Unlike state employees, it's 100%. The band got shrunk from 0 to 5%. So they would like to get to parity with state employees, but it would be at 7.5% increments based on the condition of the fund. But it's only out into the future at the point.
And we can't be specific about the 7.5% in the intent because of the conundrum of the actuaries then costing it out. And
I
creating
move a strike all on 286.
Okay, can I just say, Becky Wasserman and Jen, they're working to make it as good as possible, but they don't feel like they've had the time to fully, because this has been a changing issue over the past week, to fully vet the legal
By the
ramifications.
time this comes out, they might be in a better, we could offer amendment to deal with that language.
Whether, yes, we find on the House side, but I just wanted to, they really want that
Well,
clear.
we
They
voted out today, it makes the crossover
It
deadline.
makes the crossover deadline and then we
And then
can
we
sit on
can
the.
make amendments on the floor if we have to on.
And this is the only
Hopefully
one
we'll be
we're trying to
able to
refine the language, so it deals with how the actuaries have to treat that provision around out in the future at some point, the possibility of starting to raise that 50% up to 100% would be
What
considered.
does 100% mean?
It means that if you had a cost of living increase of 3%,
You get the whole 3?
well, state employees would, but
Right now, the teachers would get 1.5. They have
Oh.
from a previous, they have a factor of 50% that's applied
You're
to their cost
talking
of living.
about the federal growth.
yeah, the federal cost of
The
living.
CPI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a motion.
I'll
So,
second
all right. And with the understanding that that language might end up being, and we could offer an
We
amendment.
can offer an
it. And
amendment.
I'll put a hold on it, so we don't vote it out on Wednesday, so it'll be up on Thursday.
Well, you want to be here, right?
Yeah, I won't
Yeah.
be here on Wednesdays because I
Okay.
can't.
Oh, right, we're doing normal sessions.
We're going back to normal, so
Okay.
just put a hold on it.
So we have a motion to
See how
move
that-
the bill. It's a strike all, so move the bill as amended.
Senator Ballin, Senator Bruce, yes. Senator Mitchell,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes,
Senator Stock,
Yes.
Senator West.
Yes.
Okay.
I think probably I've got to report that baby.
That's your baby. I offered to do your Medicaid one, so you didn't have to, but I ain't doing that one.
So now we are down to
The waiting bill.
the waiting, and was Ruth coming in?
I'll
see you all Tuesday.
We did not have, we had thought maybe, we weren't clear earlier.
She's on deck, if we'd like her to come.
Let's have her come.
And Jim's just switching computers and he'll be right in the
So we
room.
should give
Then we
her,
have to vote to amend it, and then we have to.
Do we have to do two?
yes, we do. We have to move the bill as amended.
I move the bill as amended.
Okay.
You're seconded.
Ballin, Bruce, yes.
Okay, yes.
Sears.
Yes,
Tar.
Yes.
Weston.
Yes.
Bishop.
have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
See you there.
Thank you.
We're down to one, Rich.
Mhm.
We are doing too badly.
No, I'm not, I don't have to be out of here, so you know.
as quick as he does.
Yeah.
Help me, yeah.
You got your dog.
My dog.
That's right, you came this morning.
And Nathaniel's gone to Albany, New York, so I've got,
Oh, you got.
so he's gonna run, well,
Going there, anything interesting?
he's doing
Yeah.
some kind of presentation. Or so, I don't know, something archaeological, but normally he's been home this week, which meant, if you've noticed, I haven't rushed out quite
She's
as much.
not, she's super mellow at home,
But-
but around
Is he
strangers.
enjoying the
she
Museum
barks.
of Natural History?
I don't know, Alice, I'll have to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, any stranger, any
That was-
other dog or animal.
He even seems to see that my house is
Does
from
he
here.
have family?
Would you like to take a